The ultimate AI challenge. Could the best use of a multi-billion-dollar AI chatbot be to listen? What is AI actually useful for? This week's ultimate AI challenge comes from legit media professional Caroline Crampton, who throws down the gauntlet to the AI hype crew. I have a challenge for Gen AI. Find something I can use literally any AI tool for. I'm not averse to it being useful. I've just yet to find literally anything it doesn't make take longer and be shittier. It's fun to play around with, but at least for me, not actually usable. What does it think it's for? Thanks, Kaz. So, Kaz, I actually very briefly considered AI voice cloning your voice from your podcast to read out your question as a fun surprise. And then I remembered that would be very unethical and totally terrifying. So, as Google used to say, don't be evil. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for the question. To me, Jenny Monroe, a former Google DeepMinder and the holder of a slightly out-of-date MSc degree in computing science, specializing in AI, I would say a machine possesses some artificial intelligence if it can carry out tasks which used to require human intelligence, like complex problem solving and learning. Navigation is a classic use of AI, and we've progressed from solving shortest path math problems to sat-nav and Google Maps to self-driving cars. So that's one of my personal favorite use cases of useful AI, but I'm assuming Kaz meant generative AI, or the ability to create content like text, images, music, code, or even molecules. She confirmed that she doesn't write her podcast transcripts by hand, although she mentions her built-in AI transcript tool seems to be most accurate on white American dude voices. Whoops. Auto transcripts aside, what is Gen AI good for? Well, for one, BSing. By which I mean brainstorming, obviously. Complaints about AI learning the very human skill of making up facts that sound semi-plausible, aka bullshitting or hallucinating, as the AI community call it, sounds a bit like double standards to me. But that's a topic for another day. I asked the Google Gemini chatbot to showcase what it's useful for, and brainstorming was its very first suggestion. There's a screenshot in the blog post. So Gemini also thinks it's great at explaining, summarizing, editing, teaching, translation, research, emails, images, composing, and streamlining tasks. We'll touch on some of these later, but more another time. On the Gen AI project, each week we pick a hack challenge and use AI, tech, culture, and media to learn the latest in AI, tech, culture, and media. Today, it's Gen AI challenge number 6, brainstorming. AI for brainstorming. So Gemini and I aren't the only ones who like the idea of AI for AI-ideation. Kaz came across this. It's a link to a blog post, and I'll share an extract. The way that people seem to be using it is more like the technology that used to be called talking to a pillow. We've created a cybernetic teddy bear, something that helps to sustain an illusion of conversation that people can use in order to facilitate the well-known psychological fact that putting your thoughts into words and trying to explain them to someone else is a good way to think and have ideas. Kaz tells me that lots of recording studios have teddy bears or spoons with faces on for this purpose. And in my experience in programming, there's a concept of rubber ducky debugging, where you solve a problem by talking it through out loud, speaking to a near-silent supportive listener who might as well be an inanimate bath toy. And it works surprisingly well. But I would argue that the AI does more than the teddy bear. Maybe not enough to justify the billions of dollars price tag for this use case alone, but it is more of an all-purpose advisor or a coach than a pillow. Yes, and. So my own brain went through a bit of an ideas explosion recently. After 5 years of deeply disrupted slumber during pregnancy, and then as a parent of 3 young kids, I somehow finally got a few good nights' sleep. Unfortunately, my brain took this as a signal to flicker back to life, like the lights on a cobweb-covered arcade game in a long-since-abandoned arcade, and I've not been able to turn it off since. The large language models, or chatbots, have become my middle-of-the-night partners in crime for doing these Gen AI challenges and creating crazy-ass ideas. In my experience, the LLM's practical suggestions and clarifying questions absolutely smash through writer's block and task paralysis. Their constructive critiques nudge you onwards. They encourage. They point you in a promising direction. Even when they get, for instance, the content wrong, but maybe the structure right. Personally, I often find it perversely easier to make progress by correcting something than by tackling a blank page. And yes, I have used that technique at work to get people to complete things by sending them something that's wrong. Ethics of working practices aside, in improv comedy, there's a guiding rule that there are no bad ideas. A concept of not saying no, but instead yes and. Where if somebody says or does something daft, the other performers channel it forwards, adding good stuff on top and recasting that blip as a spark that builds into something better. Similarly, the LLMs take a single stupid thought and absolutely run with it. Here are a couple of examples. There's a screenshot or two in the blog post, but I'll give you a summary. Number 1. Nobody has time to read or study, but we can doom scroll movie star press junkets on TikTok for hours. How about Gen AI uses addictive algorithms for good and brings you celebducation? Celeb-education. Yeah. How about Ryan Reynolds as multiple Deadpools explaining relativity theory's twins paradox? Or Ariana Grande bigging up the science of the very small? Yeah, those were real suggestions from ChatGPT. Yeah, thanks. How about number 2? How about a financial fitness app, Wealth Drip, part of a broader life optimization brand? So those dodgy business ideas that one friend, who's now apparently me, is forever spouting, have a path from napkin to IPO. Is this a good thing? Is this the best path? Probably not, but let's give it a go. So how do the big bots compare? Aside from Google's Gemini, I also challenged OpenAI's ChatGPT above and ex-OpenAI team Anthropic's Claude to brainstorm what we can usefully do with Gen AI. Here's Claude's effort. Hey, this looks like an opportunity for more AI hype. Woo! Let's go! It's drafted me a blog post with lots of ideas about how it's going to save the world, which you can check out. And also a beautiful mind map. So bonus points for making pretty mind maps and trying to write me a better blog post. A lot of people like Claude's more human tone of voice, but sometimes wish it had an option to search the web in real time. Gemini Live, Real Talk. So Google's Gemini has an out loud voice chat mode called Gemini Live. I was crying out for this feature when I was using ChatGPT heavily at the start of this Gen AI project. It has a slightly stilted conversation flow for me at the moment, and sometimes it just ignores me completely. I've probably overwhelmed it. But it is getting somewhere, and it has been great when my hands are full and I don't want to stare at a screen. It also transcribes the conversation for reference, which I find helpful. So yeah, hopefully this feature will get smoother soon. On the importance of context versus prompts. You hear a lot about prompt engineering for AI chatbots, i.e., getting the knack of writing a really good guided question for the chatbot so it gives you the output that you actually want. But I don't personally hear as much about the significance of context. Because I'd started off this Gen AI project using primarily ChatGPT as the most popular one on the market, it knew my vision, it knew some challenges I wanted to explore, values I hold, my motivations, points on my life journey, my preferred tone of voice, and my love of just really bad wordplay, and more. So now it can give me helpful responses even if I just throw a badly written half sentence at it. So one example, I checked my work emails, I'm on maternity leave at the moment, and realized there was a deadline that day to submit a talk for a conference. I had very little time after I saw this, so I just quickly pasted in the email into the chat interface and asked ChatGPT to suggest a talk topic for me. It already knew what I wanted to say. So it was just a few quick tweaks and bam, done. So the takeaway is Teaching the bots context is as valuable as writing a good question prompt. And the question of whether Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Claude versus Joe Chatbot is best for you will also come down to which one you have used and therefore personalized the most. Which brings us to privacy. A valid concern. What are the big bads at big tech doing with all this info you share? Well, I do need to do a bit more digging to truly get to the bottom of that important and terrifying question. But in the meantime, it's worth making a few defensive maneuvers, like not sharing things you don't want them to know. Obvious, I guess. And checking and adjusting your privacy settings. For example, to not feed your ideas back to trained models in ChatGPT. Last I checked, Gemini was slightly better on this kind of privacy by default, but you did have to set it for ChatGPT. How did we do? So how did we do on the challenge of brainstorming useful uses of Gen AI? Is the ultimate AI challenge turning into more of an ultimate AI quest for the elusive Holy Grail? Oh man, that was a pretty bad joke, Phil. Sorry, folks. Grail. Yeah, there's no hope for that one. Anyway, probably we should crack open some code at some point. Surely auto-writing software has some utility. A worthwhile function? A helpful application? No? Yeah, I'll just give up on those puns. Let me know. Just like an AI teddy bear, I love to hear your ideas. Bonus material. Gen AI playlist. So I ran out of time and space this week. That's the school holidays for you. So I had to scale back my ambitions for this week's pod post. I was desperate to include a Matrix movie skit of me having the red pill, blue pill chat with an AI Morpheus, followed by a primal scream kind of brainstorm rage explosion rant. Oh well, we all probably dodged a bullet there. But I did start adding a theme song for each challenge or episode to a Gen AI Spotify playlist. The vibe is kind of the future, but retro. This week's theme songs are What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish. Applies equally to Barbies and AI. And Brainstorming by the Arctic Monkeys. Yes, the AI is intentionally backwards. Seems apt. If you check the post, there's a link. So yeah, this playlist is almost unlistenable due to the clash of genres, which could be a tagline for the whole Gen AI project. If you do meet anyone who likes both Madonna and breakbeat electronica, let me know. We should probably be friends. Lastly, here's a quick bio for this week's awesome virtual guest, according to ChatGPT. Caroline Crampton is a British writer and podcaster, author of A Body Made of Glass and The Way to the Sea. She created the award-winning podcast She Done It and serves as editor-in-chief of the Browser newsletter. A big thanks to Kaz for contributing to this experiment and being our first ever human special guest via the medium of WhatsApp. Get involved! If you, the reader-listener, want to take part in the Gen AI project, we'd especially love to hear your takes on the present and future of social media. So wing those over up to Friday 21st of Feb 2025. You got a little bit of time left on that one if you want to make it into the social mediums episode. But you can always send us your thoughts, questions, or corrections about Gen AI via any sociable medium. And as always, thank you so much for listening.